Hello, and welcome to a phobia-phobic episode of We Only Look Thin. I am your epithibophobic host, Catherine Weigel. I have lost about 150 pounds.
Yeah.
And with me today is my ophodiophobic husband.
Yeah. Donald Weigel. Yeah, no, I was...
Too busy worrying about your phobia?
Ophodiophonia is a fear of not being able to pronounce the names of phobias.
I know. It's not.
Oh, no, it's a fear of snakes.
We're talking about fear, but it is a fear of snakes.
What did you say yours was? Fear of bees?
No, fear of teenagers.
Oh, fear of teenagers.
Teenagers are up to no good.
Yeah, it's true.
I just don't like them. They're shady and shifty,
Yeah.
and I was one at one point, and I totally understand why
And
grown-ups...
there were few that were shadier or shiftier than you.
Oh,
when you were a
no,
teenager.
definitely.
Yeah,
we were
for
criming
sure.
it up, me and my droogs.
Criming it up.
We weren't, actually.
You had droogs.
I used to grow up. I grew up in...
I used to grow up.
I used to grow up.
Long time ago.
Done with that. I lived in a tourist town, Carmel,
Yeah.
by the sea, California.
Oh, yeah.
And
I've heard of it.
me and my chums would sit in the park in the main square and just sit there. Like, we honestly were not doing
Yeah.
any crimes. We were probably just talking about Monty Python, I guess. And many a kind police officer would be called over to us because we seemed shady and shifty.
Yeah.
We weren't. We were just sitting there, just
Yeah.
talking about...
I am not going to tell a similar story because no one will believe that I had any chums back in high school.
You did.
Clearly, I was a loner
You
who
were
had no
not.
friends. Hi, everyone.
Hi. I thought you were going to tell a story about your teen years.
No, I don't know. I had a mohawk when I was
He did.
17, 18, 19. I used to get pulled over by the police a lot.
Yeah.
Just because I had a mohawk.
And, you would not... Look, we are very mild-mannered now. You
I
would
know.
not believe that we were the punk kids and the cool goth kids.
Yeah.
But that's another time, another story, another podcast. But we're talking about fears today.
Fears today, yeah. In case you're wondering what all of this phobia talk is about, we're talking about fears, and we're not going to do a tip or product this week, so we're just going to get right into it. I understand that it is, if you're listening to this when it comes out, it is essentially St. Patrick's Day, but
Oh, wow.
I am going to talk about, pretty much St. Patrick's Day, like it might as well be.
Beerophobia?
Yeah, I am going to talk about A Christmas Carol again.
It's his favorite story.
It's my favorite story, and a lot of people don't know this, but Charles Dickens, The Christmas Carol was so popular that he
How
wrote...
popular was it?
It was so popular that he wrote a sequel to it, and it was St. Patrick's Day themed, and it was called A St. Patrick's Day Song. And it was all about a guy who refused to drink green beer and wouldn't wear green clothing, and
What is happening
people
right
would
now?
pinch him, and so he was visited by 3 leprechauns, and they convinced him to drink lots of green beer and keep St. Patrick's Day in his heart all year.
I neither confirm nor deny
No,
knowledge of any of this.
None of that
He's
is
off
true.
the rails.
None of
I
that
thought
is
he was
true.
just going to talk about A Christmas Carol.
But back around Christmas time, FX, which is a cable channel, if you don't know, cable TV channel, they came out with a brand new, much darker version of A Christmas Carol, starring Guy Pearce, around Christmas time. And, I had to watch it because I'm obsessed. And anyway, I'm not going to rehash the whole thing, but there was one part, it was a much more gritty, realistic version. And the Ghost of Christmas Past takes Scrooge back to the school where it was a boarding school where he was essentially raised. And they're at the grounds, and Scrooge says, "Oh, I recognize this place. I vowed I would never go back there." And the ghost turns to him and says, "You may have vowed that, but you go back there every night in your dreams. Your fears of it recur to you over and over again. And if you go back there one more time, maybe you'll never have to go back again." And so that got me thinking about weight loss. And of course, because everything
has to do with weight loss.
And I realized that this was sort of a metaphor for weight loss. And I spent so much of my life, so many years over and over again, being afraid of so many things that rather than just actually facing them and doing it, I instead trap myself in this circle of not getting it done and staying dramatically overweight for most of my life. And so what I think we wanted to talk about today was, what are these fears that we have about weight loss? And we can all relate to the idea of fear of gaining weight, but what are our fears about the weight loss process? What are our fears about actually doing it and being successful at it? And what is stopping us from getting it done?
Many things. The fear of teenagers, for one.
Fear of teenagers is number one. My second biggest fear in this whole thing was grizzly bears attacking the gym while I was there.
Yeah, those are very... that could happen if you live in the Kodiaks or something. I don't know. But if you're from the Kodiaks, let us know.
You know, what fears do we have, and how can we address them and get over them to actually achieve our weight loss and fitness and health goals?
Well, and I think it can stem from many different areas. I think I know for myself the fear of childhood, meophobia.
Yeah.
But it can stem from our childhoods, from over-judgmental family members or from critical peers, which I basically was just surrounded by swarms of critical peers.
Yeah, exactly.
But one becomes afraid of coming out of one's shell because we're afraid of the judgment of others. That, I think, is sort of it at its core. So fear comes from different places. It can come from our childhood. It can come from our own perfectionism. And I think we have talked about perfectionism being a form of procrastination. We don't want to be humiliated. We don't want to seem imperfect. And if we never try, we never fail, which is super great.
Yeah. And I found an interesting, there's a psychotherapist in Southern California, Matt Traub, Ph.D. I found an article online that he was quoted as saying, weight is intertwined in people's sense of security and self-confidence. So it has a far-reaching emotional impact in a lot of important areas of people's lives. So it is definitely entwined with, a sense of who we are. Like, I know I tied my weight in so hard with who I was and my sense of self-worth that when I felt really overweight, I felt like I had less of a sense of self-worth. And I thought that I needed to lose weight in order to just feel better about myself and, feel worthy of it in the first place.
Well, and two, I think we can over-identify as failures if we are... I think there was some awful author, I won't say their name, who actually said, like, you might be super successful in life, but if you're overweight, you obviously are not trustworthy as a professional because you can't control your weight. Like, being judged like that is crazy town.
Yeah, I don't know if I've ever told you this, but I actually had somebody I worked with years and years ago told me, and I was pretty overweight at the time, she said that she didn't like to hire overweight people because she thought it was indicative of them not working very hard.
Oh my gosh.
And I felt really awful. But she was sort of saying it in a way of like, but you turned out okay.
Oh, see, you're one of the good guys.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh my gosh, that's horrible. Well, and two, I think our current self imagines that somehow our future self will be better able to cope with change than the us of today. We think, well, right now I'm dealing with a work thing or a family crisis or the kids are doing something. You know what? When all of that is over, then I'll be better prepared to have this clean slate that I can act from. And we use all of that as reasons to not actually make change. We get sort of paralyzed by our current circumstance and our history to just ignore what we know we need to change about ourselves.
And I think that boils down to having this fear of the unknown, the fear of like, what will I look like? What will my life be like if I actually were to achieve my weight loss goals? Like, what would that be? And of course, obviously, the fear of failure. If I start this and I don't succeed, then what? Then where will I be? And I think that is one of the core things that stops us from doing anything about it. If we don't try, then we can't fail because we aren't actually doing anything.
Well, and if we haven't experienced a lot of what we consider big successes, if we're surrounded by people who we see are more successful than us, it can feel really intimidating to even try because we don't feel like we have the skill set. And I know, too, we did that episode on the hedonic treadmill. That's right. I said it. I'll say it again. Hedonic treadmill.
The hedonic treadmill is not a fancy exercise bike.
The
from
Peloton bike.
Yeah. But rather, it's the idea that people need something new all the time. It's sort of that phenomenon of you put a new painting on the wall of your living room, or you get a new couch and you love it and you feel like it's amazing, and then a few years later you're looking at it and it doesn't bring you the same joy, and so you need something new, even though the painting hasn't changed. You've gotten used to it,
right? So that spike in euphoria from getting a better job, being down on the scale, getting a raise, winning the lottery, getting married, having kids, like all of these things that we say, like, when this happens, when I graduate, I'll be happy. When I pay off this bill, I'll be happy. And we go back to normal, and then it doesn't feel special anymore. And we feel like we're broken because of it. We have a fear of being let down or proven not good enough to succeed. Like, it just doesn't, there's a risk in exposing ourselves like that. And when we expose our desires, it feels really vulnerable, especially if we're uncertain if we have the skills to do them. And a lot of times we have the intention, like with the New Year's resolutions, I'm going to lose 30 pounds this year. And that's your goal, but you don't actually have a lifestyle to get you there. And so you feel like a failure when really you just don't have a plan. The plan is where the success comes from, not the desire of the number.
Yeah. And Matt Traub, the PhD,
the PhD Matt Traub?
Yes, the PhD Matt Traub.
We're talking about the very same.
The same guy. He mentions also that people have a fear that it won't actually solve their problems, that people often tell themselves, if I'm skinny, I'm going to find love of my life, or I'll be successful in my career once I lose weight. And he says that it's a typical cognitive distortion thinking, that I just need to change this and everything will be better. In other words, it's that idea that once I lose weight, like that's the only problem that I really have, and that everything else in my life stems from that. And that people actually, they realize that that's probably not true. And so they're afraid that if they do lose the weight and then their problems aren't solved, then they're going to have to face all of the other things that are going on.
Yeah, I think I definitely sort of saw my weight loss as a mirage. Like I thought about it for 20, 30, 40 years.
Yeah, exactly.
But never really thought about what that person was doing. I idolized them. I put them up on a pedestal of perfection and being fixed. But it didn't actually ever occur to me that I had to bridge that gap of action instead of just the anxiety produced by thinking about it.
Yeah, yeah.
And like the dream is pure. It's exactly as you imagined it. Like, oh, your thin self. It's like this moment where you're, I don't know, like you're in a cafe and all you have is one bite of cheesecake, and then you like run off to the Louvre or something. Yeah. And it's, you're this idealized, hyper-focused version of yourself. When in reality, like, we've lost weight. I don't know if we've told you about this, but like we still do the same stuff.
Yeah, we're still the same people. We're just, thinner than we were before. Like, we still make the same mistakes and have the same issues with finances and family and everything else.
And all the other apps, fun and friendship.
Yeah, fun and friendship.
But like, we're afraid that if we ever get to our goal and it doesn't live up to our expectation, it will ruin everything. Like, yeah. I thought I'd be happy once I got to this number on the scale, and it almost diminishes all of your past thinking about it. Like, well, this is it. This is what I get at the end of the rainbow. Like, yeah. And it's just your life.
You were reading me a passage out of a book called The Alchemist earlier that I think was exactly talking about this. And I think you have it here.
I do. I have a copy of The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. It has been translated.
Ph.D.?
No. It has been translated into languages that don't even exist yet for the future generations.
Whoa.
It's been translated into like 40 zillion.
Yeah.
Anyway, but The book is about a sheep herder. I'm going to read it from chapter 1.
I never miss a good sheep herder book.
Cheap thrills.
Personally, like if it's about a sheep herder, have read it. I will read it.
The Literal Drummer Boy. So in this passage, the young man is talking to a shopkeeper about the shopkeeper's desire to go to Mecca, to travel on a pilgrimage to Mecca.
Yeah.
And he says, "So why don't you just go to Mecca now?" asked the boy. "Because it is the thought of Mecca that keeps me alive. That's what helps me face the days that are all the same. These mute crystals on the shelves and lunch and dinner at the same horrible cafe. I'm afraid that if my dream is realized, I'll have no reason to go on living. You dream about your sheep and the pyramids, but you're different than me because you want to realize your dreams. I just want to dream about Mecca. I've already imagined 1,000 times crossing the desert, arriving at the Plaza of the Sacred Stone, the 7 times I walk around it before allowing myself to touch it. I've already imagined the people who would be at my side and those in front of me and the conversations and prayers that we would share. But I'm afraid that it would all be a disappointment, so I prefer to just dream about it." That day, the merchant gave the boy permission to build the display. Not everyone can see his dreams come true the same way.
Yeah. Yeah, that is...
Mic drop.
Yeah,
or typewriter drop, maybe, because he probably wrote it on a typewriter.
Yeah, or computer, although I don't condone dropping computers. But, that deep down, a lot of us don't want to achieve our dreams because we are afraid that they won't live up to our expectations. They talk a lot about don't meet your heroes because it will almost inevitably be a letdown. And Catherine and I recently binge watched The Crown, and in it, the Queen's husband, Philip, there's a section where the moon landing happens, and he builds up the idea of meeting the American astronauts like so hard in his head that when he actually meets them, it's a huge letdown because they're just guys. Right.
He thinks they're titans, of humanity and bravery, and he meets them and they're, sniffling and coughing and they're like, I don't know, it was cool, I guess. I mean, that's not exactly it. We're paraphrasing, but it's sort of that bridging that gap between what you imagine something will be like versus what it actually is sometimes too hard to bear. And I think we did an episode on sabotage a number of years ago because our podcast has been around for so long.
Yeah.
We did an episode on sabotage, and a lot of times sabotage comes from a place of identifying as a failure over a success, because feeling like a failure seems more natural than being boastful and in a position where you're actually achieving a goal. And for me, a friend of mine actually called me out because I'm up on the scale about 10 pounds from my lowest. And she said, sometimes I think you like the goal.
Yeah.
And the purpose of losing weight. And when you're at your goal, what else is there? And I think, Donald had something about that too, about just sort of, I have spent 40 some years thinking about my weight and how it's limited me and my job opportunities and my social interactions. And then I get there and I'm thin and only people know me as a thin person, and I don't have my weight as an excuse. Yeah,
I found there's a woman named Jen Hand who lost a bunch of weight. She's got her own podcast that I think is called Cake Doesn't Count. And I found a blog post from her where she talks about her sort of fear of losing weight, that she says, a few years into my journey, I realized I was afraid of losing weight and keeping it off. Not only did weight loss send me back into the feeling of needing to control and restrict, she says, yikes, I lost weight. Now what do I do? But I was also terrified of who I was without my issues. If I didn't worry about food, my body, and my weight all the time, what would I talk about, think about, and do with my time? And
The Alchemist,
basically. Exactly. And I can definitely relate to that. And, the good news here, I know we haven't gotten to that portion of the show yet, but the good news here is that I still do nothing but talk about and think about it.
See?
So that part hasn't changed. But there is also a fear of success. And I found another Ph.D., Suzanne Babel, who...
lady?
Yeah. Wow. She did.
No, can I explain that?
Yeah.
I had a boss at one point who was female. She was the vice president, and a gentleman called complaining about some service. And I said, oh, well, our VP is out this week. She's on vacation. And the guy actually said, well, you have a lady boss? Well, I think it's super that you ladies are doing things other than riveting. Like, I was in shock. It did not go well for me, but anyway. So
yeah, this was in the 21st century, everybody.
On the PhD.
Yeah, this wasn't in the 1950s when this happened.
It was a little shocking.
Suzanne Babel, Ph.D., says that feelings of trauma are very close to feelings of excitement. So it actually, sometimes being successful and feeling a victory can actually feel to people in a very similar way that trauma feels. And if you've had a lot of trauma in your life, it can turn you off from the actual feeling of excitement, which is also pretty eye-opening as to why you might not want that success.
Well, and Brene Brown, not PhD, or no, maybe she is.
I don't know.
Brene Brown, if you're listening, let us know. But she actually talks about numbing the bad feelings also requires you to numb the good feelings, and you can't have one without the other. So if you're trying to avoid the bad feelings, you automatically limit your ability to feel the joy part because you're already anticipating disappointment. So you kind of live in this band of mediocrity. So I think that it's true that sort of that fear really is. Fear's a problem. There, I said it.
Fear is a problem. That about sums it up. I think that another thing is we can also be afraid that relationships will change. And we did a whole episode recently about people in your life not supporting you.
A wonderful, lauded,
magical episode. Lauded. It won all kinds of awards on the internet about relationships and people in your life not supporting you. And I think that we can really worry about people being unsupportive if we want to change ourselves, and also perhaps being jealous of our success. It's sometimes misery loves company. And if you've got friends and loved ones who you can commiserate with and be like, boy, I'm 100 pounds overweight and you are too. And, there's almost a certain sense of camaraderie there. And there may be a fear in losing that camaraderie if you end up having some success, if your loved ones and friends don't.
For sure. I mean, so on this journey, we've had to change our priorities. There can be a fear of changing spending habits, weekends bar hopping, casual grazing, sitting with our feelings. Like, that's all scary stuff to change. Like, actually just being present and aware and mindful is really scary. It can feel like a big loss to not just be able to order takeout all the time or go to the movies and order, quadruple giant buckets of things.
Yeah, when I found out I had type 2 diabetes, I started mourning the loss of my life. Like, not my actual, like, I was going to die, but the sort of,
the purpose for living.
Yeah, the air quotes, like, I will no longer be able to enjoy food ever again now, and I was so upset about that.
He was convinced that it was all over, but I had been practicing positive thinking, which we'll talk about in a couple minutes.
Yeah.
It'll be exciting. So change and success can bring up a lot of feelings, as we've talked about. There are many people who don't want the attention that they think that they're going to get when they lose weight. They don't want people commenting on them. I've got to say, growing up, I never received a cat call, or like, not that that is something that women want, but I was never catcalled.
Yeah.
I was more, ridiculed, which didn't feel great. But I think some women actually fear that, like, well, if I lose weight, I'm going to get a different kind of attention from people.
Now, people may have called you Cat because your name is Catherine, though.
Maybe, yes. Yeah. I was called Kit Kat, not Cat.
I cat call you all the time
He
now.
does. Yeah, thanks for objectifying me.
Wolf Whistle and the whole thing. Wolf Wizzle.
Sounds like a private eye.
Yeah, it does.
But we hide behind our weight. And I definitely did that. I used it as an excuse for why I wasn't getting a promotion or why people didn't like me. And if I lost the weight, which I did, and then I didn't have any boundary between me and actual feelings and people.
Yeah.
People can judge us for changing, like we talked about in the relationship episode. People have their own hangups about what they think that we are capable of. there's also the fear of gaining back the weight.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I did that for years and years and years. I had lost 60 pounds on this last time journey. And I remember posting online about being terrified that it was just all going to go out the door immediately and I was going to gain it all back.
Yeah.
And I didn't have proof that that was going to happen, but I just felt like it was so tenuous that I didn't believe in myself.
Well, there's still a part of me that holds on to that fear a little bit. Because I know that I had lost a bunch of weight before and gained it back. And I know this time is very, very different in how I did it, but there is still a part of me that knows that I have it within me to let this all go. And that fear is definitely still present.
Well, and two, I think there's a fear of becoming a person that you don't want to be. If the people that you see in your life who are healthy and fit, if you think they're jerks, and you go, well, I don't want to turn into a jerk by losing weight. Like, thin people are bossy and
thin people
mean.
are judgmental, and like they look down their nose at, every time somebody else eats a dessert, they're like, oh, that's not clean eating. That kind of thing.
But like we said, there's also, the fear of if I'm successful, I won't have the life I have now. I won't have the big family dinners on Sunday. I won't be able to sleep in and drink coffee in the morning. I'll have to go, to a fitness class or something like that.
Yeah. And there's this fear of being miserable forever. And, I know for me, even now, I still equate food with fun or fun with food, vice versa. And the idea that I have to in some way restrict what I'm eating means I need to restrict my fun. And a large part of this is getting over that idea, that you can have fun without food, and it doesn't have to be like every chance you get to have fun doesn't have to involve indulging in some, decadent meal.
Well, and I think we also, and I don't know, we've said everything before. I guess you should just cut out every time I say I've said this before. But it feels good to be right about ourselves.
Yeah.
It feels good to say, I can't do it because I have family and I have obligations and my husband eats Oreos. And when we have excuses and we protect those excuses, we get to keep those excuses. And when we're challenged, like, hey, what if you just stopped eating after 8 o'clock? Like, oh, I've tried that before and it's never going to work because I eat while I'm sleeping. Like, if you keep fighting for your challenges, you get to keep those challenges. And we're going to talk, I know all we're doing is talking about fears, but we're going to give you some tips on maybe how to change your mindset a little bit, because it is possible, because we did it. Like, that's number one. We did it. We were in no position to inspire anyone.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that lesson number one is realizing that your excuses they protect you from stepping outside of your comfort zone, but they also prevent you from reaching your full potential. Every time I lied to myself and said that there was nothing I could do, or that I had to become perfect overnight, all of those excuses I used to tell myself about not having time and that my metabolism was terrible and that I had it worse than everybody else, those were just excuses. They were stopping me from actually achieving my dream. And once I cut through all of that and realized it was lies, then it was just a matter of putting the habits in place and going through the motions and making it happen.
Well, and I see people who do that, and I know I see it in myself, and it might not be in the weight loss category, but other categories, when I see people using that excuse of like, well, that'll never work. I kind of cringe a little bit. I'm like, I was there. Like, that was totally me a few years ago. And it's hard to just let someone go through that process, because proselytizing has never, like, being yelled at to lose weight has never worked. It's not like I carry around like a book of my old photos, my before and now. I was like, oh, drop it in front of someone. Oh, is that? Yeah. Oh, pardon me. That's just my before and after photos.
Maybe we should start doing that.
Oh my gosh. That would be the kind of annoying people that we rail against.
Exactly. But getting over the idea that exercise and dieting, and I put dieting in quotes, has to be painful. And look, it isn't without work. I don't mean that you don't have to
Can't I just do nothing?
Yeah, you have to do something. You have to do more than you're doing now, but you don't have to go to an extreme to where you absolutely hate everything about it. And one of the keys for me was realizing that I could do it in baby steps, that I could gently add exercise to my life and I could gently take away calories from my life. And I didn't have to go, from 0 to miserable overnight. I took 2 years until I went to miserable.
I was trying to make up some marriage joke like, oh, you got that when you said I do, my guy.
Yeah, exactly.
Tough look.
No, but, I'm not miserable doing what I'm doing because I gently introduced it into my life. And if I was eating 4,500 calories a day, which I used to, and I said, you have to go down to 1,800, then I might have been miserable. But I gently stepped it back until it just sort of became natural. And seeing results along the way was really motivating to keep going. I was like, oh, this wasn't so bad. I cut myself down to 3,500 calories and I'm slowly losing some weight. You know what? I can keep doing this. And you know what? I bet if I cut down a little more calories, then I can keep going. And it's very encouraging.
Well, and when you started, you did not have that positive mindset. You were very negative. And
no, I am positive that I did not.
But read a book called What to Say When You Talk to Yourself by Shad Helmstetter.
Yeah.
And he talks about changing your language from I can't, I'll never, it's too late, like that'll never work, to I'll try again. I mean, he has a whole list. I'm not going to paraphrase the whole thing, but it's like, I might be able to stop eating at 8:00. I think I could eat on smaller plates. I could go for a 5-minute walk. That might do me a little bit of good. I'm going to give that a try. Like, that is so much better than it'll never, no. Because
yeah, it's a really great book. And changing that I can't to I can't yet.
Yeah.
And I will link to the book in the show notes. We've talked about it before, but I oftentimes used to say, what's wrong with me? Why am I so stupid? Why can't I get this? And, instead of that, now I tell myself, well, I am not able to do this right now, but I know if I try. We recently started doing this strength training video. It's been about a month ago now. And the first time that we did it, I thought it was impossible. And I didn't think I could ever get there. And now I'm able to do, after just a month of doing it consistently, I'm able to do almost the whole thing as well as the instructor on the video. I'm not quite there yet, but I can see that it is within my reach. And there was a time at which I might have just tried that video once or twice and just given up and thought to myself, this is impossible. I'll never get there. But I know now that if I stick to it, that I can do it.
Yeah. And for me, I'm also doing the videos, and we're not going to talk too much about fitness in this episode because I think we're going to talk about it more in the next episode. So I'm not going to tell you what happened. You'll have to find out next time.
Exactly.
No, but I modify. I do push-ups on my knees instead of on my toes. Like, it's okay to modify and take things slowly and to make changes that feel right for you instead of being bossed around by a plan or the internet.
And one thing, which leads me to my next thing, one thing that can help you get over your fears of doing this is really researching what you'll be doing, watching videos online, even if they're not exercise videos about nutrition and videos about ways to log food, videos about meal prep, like all that sort of thing. And listening to podcasts, like ours, like others. Like, one of the things, we listen to the Half Size Me podcast quite a bit, and we listen to all kinds of things that aren't related to weight loss, but are related to habits.
It all comes back.
And positive mindset and all of those things. And applying it to this really helps. And all of those, getting those other voices in your head can really help you get over your fear of doing it.
Well, and I think something you didn't touch on, Donald.
I didn't touch on something?
You didn't touch on it. You identify as a questioner in the Gretchen Rubin world. If you see data that makes sense to you, you are much more likely to follow a plan.
Yeah,
There is also the analysis paralysis, research and over-research and never actually do anything because
that's very true.
So you didn't think of that, did you? Why I'm sounding like such a jerk.
Why are you so mean?
I'm not. I love you. But it's like, for you as a questioner, that makes sense. I know for me, I've bought books, I've signed up for plans and then never did anything with them.
Yeah.
And it's the action. Like, there's a point for research. And then there was a point of just like, do something.
Well, you were talking about that earlier as we were prepping for this episode. You were talking about the what's the worst that can happen? Like, I am terrified of going to a Weight Watchers meeting, but really, what is the worst that can happen?
Rotten garbage thrown at me.
I don't think people bring rotten garbage to those meetings. It's possible that like a swarm of Africanized killer bees may hit the meeting.
Yeah. No, I have a friend. I saw it on Reddit. That
or
happened.
Giant spiders will attack.
Yes.
But otherwise, short of that, like really, like what is the worst that can happen?
Well, I often sit with things in my brain and I can come up with 50 problems to any solution. And I'm very good at it. I'm great at that. But that, like, the Weight Watcher meeting is too far. It's too much money. I don't want people to see my weight. I don't want to, like, what if the chairs aren't comfortable? What if everybody looks at me? Like, you can come up with 50 anxiety-producing reasons that something's going to go wrong. But realistically, the Weight Watcher people are there to help you. And everybody's there because they have an issue. And the worst thing that could happen is it's boring.
It's not for you.
It's not for you.
And you try something else. And, we talked recently about decision fatigue. That's easy for you to say. Decision fatigue.
That's not what I thought you were going to say.
And the Tiny Decisions app, which, if you really can't decide what to do, put all of your options onto the app and let the app pick for you. And you know what? These weight loss and fitness decisions don't have to be forever. Like when I first got the diabetes diagnosis, I gave up sugar and flour and pasta and I thought it was forever. And it turned out that it wasn't. And I was able to work those things back into my life. And now I enjoy them fairly regularly, but in much more moderation than I used to.
Well, and I think perfectionists too, they think that when they make a choice, and when they say they, I mean me, that they is the me that I...
Yeah.
But I would say like, okay, Weight Watchers is it. If I don't do Weight Watchers, that's the only thing that's going to work. And if it doesn't work, that means I'm a failure and everything's a failure and this is never going to work. And see, I told you so, like I'm the outlier who can't lose weight. And we put so much pressure on a plan to be perfect. And then we want to prove to ourselves that we're incapable and we're the delicate flower that just can't do the work. There is a combination of food and fitness and mindset that will help you get to your goals.
Yeah.
And just being diligent in trying and revising and refining. So, what's the worst that could happen? Worst that could happen is Weight Watchers doesn't work. What's the best that could happen? I get some great tools and I learn a couple of new things and it makes me more well-informed for the next time. Because
I don't do Weight Watchers, but the food tracking that I learned at Weight Watchers, I still use those skills to this day. And I find that part of it invaluable. And I know that I also used to get hung up on things that would work for me for a while that would stop working. I would feel like, well, this used to work. Why isn't it working now? I guess I should just give up entirely. But now I know that I need to keep trying new combinations of things and not getting too stuck in a rut, because that hedonic treadmill, amongst other things, is going to come around, and I'm going to start getting tired of the food. The wonderful 120 calorie yogurt that I found that I couldn't stop eating for 6 months. Eventually, I'm going to get tired of it, and I'm going to need something different. But just because I've gotten tired of it doesn't mean I should just stop eating everything and go back to the way I was before.
Right. I mean, there are things we were talking about in Wolt Place the other day, WOLT Place.
WOLT.
About giving up on weight loss or just feeling like you can't go on. And the question is more, what won't you give up? Like, would you give up going to tap dancing? No. Okay, well then you still have tap dance. Would you give up having salad? No, salads are good.
Yeah.
Would you give up, there are lots of things even without the calorie counting that can enrich your life that aren't punishments. None of this is to make your life worse or, be terrible. It's about improving it. And we don't believe we can get there, but we did. Like Donald and I got there.
Yeah.
And I know, maybe there's a whole other episode on what our life is like now, versus what it was like before. But we still have challenges. It felt great to get on the scale that first time and see the number that I am now. Now it feels normal.
Yeah.
It's the new normal. It's fine. It's great. It's amazing. But it's also not, you know, that euphoria. Like, could you imagine a 40-year euphoria of being like, that's my scale, everybody. Like, whoa, she's still hanging on to that scale victory. Awesome.
Yeah.
Great. What else you got
it's like
going
living
on?
off that, you know, your high school victories, you know, for the rest of your life. Like Uncle Rico.
Exactly. Napoleon Dynamite.
Napoleon Dynamite.
But that thing that you said about that woman from that awful podcast, whatever it was called. No, I don't know.
Wow.
Of that, like, what am I if I'm not a person who has weight issues? Like, we spend so much time being a certain thing, whether it's a student who just keeps going back to get additional PhDs because they don't want to get a real job in the real world. They become a parent and only identify as a parent, and then the kids leave home and they don't feel like they have anything.
Yeah.
For me, weight was everything. And like, what am I if I'm not thinking about weight? I still think about weight all the time, but I'm also able to expand into other areas because I know I've accomplished this. What else can I accomplish?
And I just have a few more quick things to touch on. One of the things that can help you getting over your fears is to try and find fitness activities and a diet that meets your current level. Like, it is not super smart to go from doing nothing to trying to run 5 miles, from couch to 5 miles immediately, or to drop your calories from 4,500 a day down to 800 a day. Like, I don't think it's ever a good idea to go down that low in the first place.
Well, and like Forrest Gump, what was it in Forrest Gump? He's like, I just decided to run.
I just decided to start running. And before I knew it, I ran entirely across country.
Yeah, like, that's not what actual life is like.
No.
Small steps.
No. And also, one thing you can do is find a group of people who are where you are, or can relate to where you are now, who used to be there and who won't judge you. I think a lot of, we're afraid of that judgment, and finding people who can support you no matter what. We have an online support group. There are others out there that you can find, and find your people who understand and have been there and can give you advice. And really, sometimes you just need cheerleaders around you.
Right. And people who are working on being their best selves too. Someone else who is working and hustling in the same way that you want to can inspire you to be better yourself. If you share an office with someone who's really moody and cranky and thinks work is terrible, that mood is going to affect you. If you work and share an office, this happened to me, with someone who was really positive and fast-paced and getting the job done, that's inspiring. But
that's something I've really tried hard to work on at my actual job, which has nothing to do with weight loss or fitness, but trying to keep that positive attitude. Because when somebody is complaining all the time and is, saying nothing but negative things, like, it's really a downer, and it's really startling to be around somebody else. And I used to be that guy, and I still am that guy sometimes, but I'm trying hard not to be. One last thing I have, I'm not sure what else you have,
It's odd.
dear.
I have nothing else to say.
Wow.
This is so weird.
That might be the first time.
I know.
The last thing I wanted to impart, and again, this is something that we've said over and over again, but try to get over that idea of getting it over with quickly. Like, we have a whole episode about, getting it over with quickly. And you really have the rest of your life to do this. And if it is too painful for you to try and lose a pound a week, first of all, a lot of people want to go in and lose 5 pounds a week, which is it's unrealistic and unsustainable. But if losing a pound a week is too difficult for you to maintain, how about just losing a quarter pound a week and doing what you have to do that much?
Donald has some math associated with this number. Donald, 1/4 of 1 pound is not going to do anything.
That's what a lot of people think. But really, if you do nothing, if you let your fears overcome you and you end up doing nothing, what's the best thing that will happen to you in 5 years? The absolute best thing that will happen is that you stay the weight that you are now. And you'll be 5 years older, so chances are, if you stay the way you are now, that your health will be even worse. And what's more likely to happen if you give in to your fears and don't do anything is that you're going to put on weight.
Yeah.
And you're going to be even less happy with yourself, and your health is going to be even worse than it is now.
And you're going to see pictures of yourself today going, I did not know how good I had it back in the day when I was listening to Walt.
Exactly. But if
nobody says that.
But if
remember when I listened to Walt, those were the good days.
I think everyone says that. But if you lose just a quarter pound a week, 5 years from now, you're down 60 pounds. And imagine,
what? How does that math strikes
being down
again?
60 pounds. Like, even if you have 150, 200 pounds or more to lose, imagine being down 60 pounds instead of being where you are now, or instead of gaining weight. Like, how much prouder of yourself will you be? How much more grateful will you be that you didn't give in to your fears? And how much better will your health and fitness be at that point?
Well, and here's the thing. Remember how I said I had nothing to say? I got something to say.
She lied.
At the time, it was true, and now it's changed. So here's the thing. This is not a dress rehearsal.
Yeah.
This is not your first try on a Groundhog's Day that you can do over again.
Yeah.
We have, to quote the amazing soap opera, we've got one life to live. And we seriously, this is it. This is it. This is the only time you have. This is the only time you have to invest in yourself. This is the only time to start advocating for yourself, to start setting boundaries. I don't know why I'm so fired up right now.
Yeah.
But we spend so much time being small in our world, not taking up space, not speaking up for ourselves,
and being afraid.
And not taking risks.
Yeah.
And we think somehow that maturity is 10 years older than whatever we are now. Well, people in their 50s know how to get it done. People in their 60s finally, they're tired of the BS and they start living their best lives. Like, when I magically get there, that will happen to me.
Yeah.
And I remember when I hit 40, I was thinking, okay, people at 40 have it all figured out. So I guess if I don't have it figured out by 40, it's too late for me. And it is such nonsense. It is such an invisible force field that we think we're going to go through. And if you don't start advocating for yourself right now, you're not magically going to feel like it in 5 years. Your older self is not going to magically have that power. The power comes from investing in yourself slowly over time, challenging yourself a little bit, being kind to yourself. It is a hard balance, but anxiety comes from inaction. It comes from feeling like we don't have a choice. And every single day, we have a choice in this journey, and starting to take that risk, being afraid and doing it anyway.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm afraid. I'm doing it. We're making it happen. I'm still moving forward. It doesn't always feel amazing. It doesn't always feel like, a high five sequence from the end of, Chips or the A-Team or something. But it is so worth it to be the age that I am now and know that less than 5 years ago, none of this was happening.
Yeah.
None of it was happening for you. None of it was happening for me. And knowing that I feel like our best part of our life is still ahead of us. I'm not going back to high school days saying that those were the glory days. Not doing it. I want the best to be yet to come, and I'm going to have to earn it. It's not something that's magically going to happen. I've got to hustle for it. And I believe that you can hustle for it, dear listener.
Wow. Boy, for somebody who had nothing else to say, she sure did have some stuff to say. Well, thank you so much for listening to what both of us had to say. And we really appreciate every single one of you. It means a lot to us. It really, really does when you listen. And if you would like to help us out a little bit, going to Apple Podcasts and leaving us a rating and a review really helps people find the show. It helps grow the show.
And grow our egos.
And grow our egos. Yes, we love reading them. We really appreciate every one of you. And thank you so much. If you would like to follow us on the socials, you can find us at Facebook and Twitter and Instagram at We Only Look Thin.
You can email us at weonlylookthin@gmail.com. You can, what else can they do? You can go to our website, weonlylookthin.com, and click on Join Our Support Group for more information on Wolt Place, WOLT Place. We have 2 different membership options, a monthly with a complimentary 3-day trial and a 3-month membership with a complimentary 7-day trial. It is an amazing group. I'm so proud of it. And it keeps me going every day. So
It sure does.
It sure does.
It might keep you going as well. So if you still don't know the difference between the fear of snakes or the fear of teenagers or the fear of grizzly bears, just remember that Catherine and I are an inspiration.
The information that you hear on this podcast is for informational purposes only. The hosts are not medical professionals. You should always consult with your doctor, nurse, or other certified health professional before beginning any diet or fitness program.